Hi, it's Patrick. In this video I'm going to show you how to validate your HTML and your CSS, how to add validation badges, and then how to upload it and recheck it. So I'm looking at right now my plain 502 project, and here is my 502 project in Dreamweaver. So in a previous video I quickly showed you how to validate your code in Dreamweaver and to add some badges. I'm going to repeat these steps just in case you've forgotten the details. So in Dreamweaver, with my file open, I can go up to File, Validate, and Validate Current Document. I'm going to click OK. And right now it says that I have no errors, so this looks great. I'm going to repeat the steps for this second file. Okay, so both of them look great. So now that I know that they look good in Dreamweaver, I'm going to then go ahead and get some validation badges. So what I like to do is I like to go to Google and search so down here, this venturas.org, there's some validation badges that I like to use. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to save my HTML5 ones and the CSS3 ones by right clicking and save image as. I'm going to save them in my images folder. Okay, so now I'm going to add my HTML1 to my plain 502 page. I'm going to go to Insert, Image, Image, go to my Images folder, and I'm going to add the HTML5 one. First thing I want to do when I insert an image is add some alt text. Okay, so now I'm going to save this, and I'm going to upload this file. Go to Expand View. I'm going to connect. I'm going to hit refresh. Okay, now I'm going to click on my plain page and I'm going to drag and drop. It's going to ask me if I want to upload dependent files, and I do. So in this case, it's actually uploading that image too. So now if I go to my EDTECH 2 site, the plain 502, I can see there it is. So that looked great. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a new tab and I'm going to Google HTML5 validation. I'm going to go to this first one and I'm going to copy my URL and I'm going to paste it in here. So I think it's important to recheck your code once you've uploaded it, because once you do little things like add an image, sometimes you can get error in your code. So validating your code is really important, especially when you're new with HTML, CSS, and Dreamweaver, because it helps you find where you have problems or errors in your code. I'm going to hit check, and it looks great. So I'm going to do two other things. So now if I scroll down, one thing you'll notice is it gives me the ability to link to this result. And this is great because I can actually add a link to that validation badge, so later users or myself can click on it and recheck the code. Now, this is one helpful way to do it, but what I like to do is I like to Google HTML validation referrer, and I can find this down here. I'm just going to copy this URL, because what this will do, by using that instead of this, basically if I move my page wherever on another server, it will know to automatically recheck that specific page. So I'm going to jump into Dreamweaver and I'll show you what I mean. Minimize that. I'm going to go down to HTML5, and down here in the Properties Inspector, I'm going to paste that code. I'm going to click away and then click back on it because I want to make sure my target is blank. Now blank just means it opens in a new window when I click on it. That's really important whenever a link goes to an external website. So I'm going to save this. Now if I preview it right now, what will happen is when I click on it, it's going to try to link correctly, but you'll notice that gives me an error. That's okay because I haven't uploaded it yet. Now when I upload this to EDTECH 2, it should work correctly. I'm going to drag my plain 502 page over, click yes, go back to my page, I'm going to hit refresh, and I'm going to click on the validation badge, and just like that it works. So that referrer language tells it to check the current page, and that worked perfectly. So now I'm going to check the 502 page as well. Now if you remember, there's also some CSS. Many would argue it's more important to validate your HTML than your CSS. And in fact, when we're creating web pages for mobile sites, you'll actually find that some of this CSS you can't validate. So now I'm going to jump down into Dreamweaver, and I'm going to go to my plain page. I'm going to put my cursor in my footer. I'm going to go to Insert Image. I'm going to do the HTML one, and I'm going to put my cursor right after it. I'm going to repeat these steps. So now I'm going to click on each one of these images, and I'm going to add some alt text. So you'll notice in this case the alt text box is hiding over here. That's okay. I'm going to save. I'm going to re-upload. I'm going to hit refresh. Okay, now I'm going to click on my 502 page. I'm going to drag it into my 502 folder. I'm going to hit yes. So now it's uploading 4 things. It's uploading the HTML file, the CSS file, and the 2 images. So now if I go into my web browser, if I go to my 502 page, I'm going to copy that URL. I should notice down here I have my 2 images. They look good. My validation badges. I'm going to check the HTML. That looks good. It's always important to read the warnings too and find out what they're recommending. In this case, usually the first warning is that HTML5 is still new. So it says no errors were found. Now in this case with CSS, it acts a little differently than the HTML in that it actually gives you some code to copy in. The problem with this code is it can sometimes give you errors. So what I'm going to do is, if you scroll down here, you'll see that it actually gives you that refer text. And so this is what I would actually use with the previous validation badges we downloaded rather than copying and pasting this. So what we're going to do is we're first going to focus on the HTML. So if I go back into Dreamweaver, I'm going to actually just take that same code that I used before, that refer for the HTML. So, okay, so I'm going to go over here, I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to paste this in. Okay, and you can see that it basically added that link tag right around the image, so that looks good. And it just has that refer text. So I'm going to click on the image again because I want to make sure I have my target blank. Now I'm going to scroll over to the CSS badge. We're going to go back to the CSS validation site. I'm going to copy this text, which is a little different if you actually look at the URL, but it does the same thing. It tells the validation site to recheck it. Okay, so I'm going to click on off, click back on, and change the target. Then I'm going to put my cursor here and I'm going to do a shift, enter, return. Do that on a new line. So I'm going to save this and I'm going to re-upload it and check it again. Drag my 502 folder over, dependent files yes. Okay, so back in my browser I'm going to refresh, scroll down, and I'm going to click HTML. Notice how it opens in a new window. Everything looks good. And do the CSS, and everything looks good. So just like that, I was able to successfully validate both my HTML and my CSS, add some validation badges, and then upload that to that Tech2 server. Now, adding validation badges in some ways is a practice that isn't as popular as it once was, but it's still important, especially when you're new creating websites, to spend time to check your code, make sure it's correct, and to fix errors when you can. So like I showed in a previous video, what happens if there's a problem, for instance, if I get rid of this tag and I go to validate, is it will give you some information on where the error is. It's not always clear what the error is, but you need to spend some time just tinkering around and following the little bit of information it gives you. So when I validate this, when I do get an error, it'll say something like this. This is pretty clear, but it's basically saying that section tag really on line 15 needs a header. So this is where I can go find line 15. I can find the section that they're talking about. In this case, I can add a header. So then when I try to validate it again, that error should go away. Thanks.